The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are wrapping up our look at the player cards in Threads of Fate. That's right, we are looking at the Survivor cards. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. There are 2 Survivor cards to wrap up this pack, so without further ado, let's get started. The first Survivor card in the pack is Perseverance. It's a 2-cost event with 2 willpower skill icons and the spirit trait. It has the game text Fast. Play when you are assigned damage and or horror that would defeat you. Cancel up to 4 of that damage and or horror. Damage cancellation is extremely rare in the Arkham Horror LCG, and it's been unheard of at level 0. There are only 3 cards at the moment that cancel damage and or horror, and only one of them is really relevant to survivors. There's I've Had Worse, a Guardian event from Where Doom Awaits, the Armor of Ardennes, a Guardian asset from Dim Carcosa, and of course Devil's Luck, a Survivor event from the Unspeakable Oath. All 3 cost experience points, and quite a few experience points in the case of I've Had Worse and the Armor of Ardennes, while Devil's Luck has the Exile keyword, which of course means if you use it during a game, you will have to pay its experience point cost again to put it in your deck. Perseverance is quite similar to Devil's Luck, although it's not quite as strong, which is to be expected for a level 0 card. Both cards are fast, however, you may play Devil's Luck to cancel up to 10 damage and or horror whenever it is dealt to you. Perseverance cancels less than half that amount. It also has a higher opportunity cost since you may play the card only if that damage and or horror would defeat you, which is a pretty important distinction. Perseverance is going to spend a lot of time sitting in your hand while you wait for the right time to use it, which you're probably hoping will never come. At least it doesn't have the exile keyword, so you won't have to purchase the card again if you happen to play it to save your own skin. If you don't think you'll need to play Perseverance, the card is still extremely useful because it has those 2 juicy willpower skill icons. I love cards that double up on the willpower skill icons because the willpower skill tests are so common on encounter cards. The double willpower skill icons on Perseverance are so good that you may even want to consider replacing Guts with Perseverance in your deck list. I'm not certain whether I'm ready to make that switch yet, but it's certainly an interesting possibility that exists for survivors and off-class survivors. There is a fair amount of damage and or trauma flying around in the Forgotten Age campaign so far, so much so that even Guardians with their massive health pools can struggle to stay alive if they draw the wrong sequence of cards. Perseverance gives survivors and off-class survivors a way to mitigate some of that damage and horror that's flying around. Perseverance may also be worth a look as an insurance policy against heavy hitters in a combat-oriented investigator such as William York. And don't forget about those Dunwich investigators who now have access to damage and or horror cancellation at level 0. I'm thinking here primarily of Zoe Samaras. I've played her in a couple of scenarios, and her health pool isn't as big as it used to be. That's for sure, with all that damage flying around. So maybe Perseverance is the ticket to help her there. Perseverance will almost certainly find a home in my Calvin WRIGHT deck. One of the challenges of playing Calvin is that you are constantly on the verge of defeat. You want to take damage and horror to power up your abilities, but that doesn't leave you a whole lot of room for error. If you draw the wrong encounter card or an enemy makes an unexpected attack due to the retaliate or alert keywords, Calvin can quickly find himself overwhelmed. Calvin is always walking a very fine line between victory and defeat, and Perseverance is a great tool to have in your back pocket if your other damage and horror mitigation tools suddenly come up short. I know I play a lot of assets and allies in my Calvin deck, and sometimes they're not quite enough. So Perseverance is looking awfully good in Calvin. You could also make a similar argument for including Perseverance in a deck that's trying to abuse the desperate skill cards from Echoes of the Past. If you only have 3 or fewer sanity remaining, you are just 1 rotting remains away from defeat. Perseverance could well be the difference between victory and defeat in those type of situations. Now, while I can see Perseverance making the cut in a variety of decks, there is one particular deck archetype where it may not fit well, and that is Dark Horse. Dark Horse decks prefer to have as few resources as possible, so sitting on 2 resources for an extended period of time is not really ideal for that type of deck. It would have been a lot better if Perseverance cost only 1 resource, since you could trigger cards like Madame Labranche, the survivor asset from a Phantom of Truth, to grab a resource if you were afraid of dying, say during the Mythos phase. You have to make a skill test that's make or break. You could trigger Madame Labranche, gain that resource, and then you'd have that, you could play that Perseverance. You can still do that, but you've got to be sitting on a resource to begin with, which, as we've mentioned, is not ideal for Dark Horse. As it stands, I think Devil's Luck feels like a much better choice for that if you want that sort of protection in your Dark Horse deck. Damage and or horror mitigation is one of the fundamentals of the Arkham Horror LCG, and that's why players include so many allies and items with health and sanity in their decks. Survivor and off-class survivors now have another option in Perseverance. Perseverance doesn't replace the need to play those allies and items, but it's awfully nice to have if you don't see those assets in time, or those assets get overwhelmed by too much damage and horror. I'm not crazy about Perseverance's opportunity cost, but those 2 willpower skill icons mean that the card is far from useless if you don't happen to need it. From what I've seen in the Forgotten Age cycle so far, there's a potential for a lot of damage and trauma, so there is a good chance you'll need to save your own hide at some point, especially if you're playing Calvin Wright, and Perseverance can certainly help you in that respect. The second survivor card in the pack is Stunning Blow. It's a skill with a combat skill icon and the practiced trait. It has the game text, if this skill test is successful during an attack, automatically evade the attacked enemy. Now, at first glance, Stunning Blow seems like a card that's working at cross purposes. After all, if you're fighting an enemy, presumably with the intention of killing it, why would you bother wasting resources on evading it too? But Stunning Blow is quite useful in at least 2 situations. First, while many combat-oriented investigators are better equipped to kill enemies than evade them, sometimes retreat is a much better option. Who knows, maybe you've got only 1 or 2 shots left in your 45 automatic and you'd like to save that ammo for a higher priority target. Maybe you simply can't waste the time killing the enemy because you need to move and resign before the catacomb or temple collapses on top of you. Whatever the reason, Stunning Blow gives that investigator a way to disengage from enemies using their combat skill value, as well as all the bonuses to that skill value from allies, items, and talents, rather than agility. This is particularly helpful if the enemy's evade value is higher than its fight value. I'm thinking of an enemy such as the Conglomeration of Spheres from the Dunwich Legacy, for example. Evading a conglomeration using agility is going to be a challenge for most survivors and off-class survivors. Evading it using Stunning Blow, on the other hand, should almost be trivial. Second, Stunning Blow is useful if you're fighting an enemy with a lot of health, such as a boss at the end of a scenario or campaign. Certain bosses, such as the Harbinger of Velusia, have so much health that it's really unlikely, if not impossible, for an investigator or a group of investigators to take it down in a single round. Elite enemies are just as vulnerable to Stunning Blow as non-elites, so if you can land that Stunning Blow on an enemy, you can pile on the damage with impunity, especially if that enemy also happens to have the Alert and Retaliate keywords. A well-timed Stunning Blow can also help other investigators join the fray using cards such as Sneak Attack and or Waylay, both of which require an exhausted enemy. You could also use Stunning Blow to set up an Eavesdrop, the rogue event from the Forgotten Age Deluxe expansion. I'm not a big fan of Eavesdrop, but it's certainly a possibility that you could you could consider if you're playing multiplayer and you need to gather a couple of extra clues. The beauty of Stunning Blow is that it prevents an enemy from retaliating during future attacks or launching a counterattack the following enemy phase. If you know you can't defeat the enemy this round, Stunning Blow is like a preemptive dodge, which is quite good. If you're playing multiplayer and the enemy has the massive keyword, Stunning Blow is a preemptive dodge for all of the investigators at that location, which is pretty amazing. Unfortunately, Stunning Blow doesn't work against two bosses that players encounter most frequently, Umordoth and the Experiment. Umordoth readies at the end of each investigator's turn, which kind of negates what Stunning Blow is doing, while the Experiment readies at the beginning of the enemy phase. So Stunning Blow won't help you against these two guys. Stunning Blow is a welcome addition to the card pool for an offensive-minded survivor such as William York and Silas Marsh. Sometimes running away is a hell of a lot better than fighting, and Stunning Blow can create an opening for an investigator to escape whether the enemy is elite or non-elite. It's also a good way of tying up those bosses that have so much health that there is no way you're going to kill them in one turn. As long as that boss doesn't have a way to ready before the enemy phase, stunning it will also prevent it from attacking. If that enemy has the massive keyword, you're helping not only yourself but also your entire team survive another round. And I think that's a lot of value for a lowly level 0 card. That's going to do it for my review of the Survivor cards in Threads of Fate. Survivors do very well in this pack. Perseverance is the first level 0 in the card. Perseverance is the first level 0 card in the game that cancels damage and/or horror. It does have a significant opportunity cost since the damage and/or horror must defeat you, but it is a nice insurance policy if you're playing Calvin Wright or you're playing an investigator who needs to survive one big hit from an enemy. Stunning Blow, and it's also got those 2 willpower icons as well. Don't forget about those if you don't need to play it. Stunning Blow is also a really good level 0 card that is useful in a variety of situations. At worst, you're going to commit it to a skill test for a combat skill icon. At best, you're going to be creating an opening for your investigator to avoid an annoying enemy, pinning down a high health boss, or preventing a massive enemy from attacking everyone at your location. And I like cards that can play a variety of roles, and Stunning Blow fits that bill nicely. That's going to do it for my review. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromling@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromling. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.